Here's a tax protester problem. One of my friends is a tax protester, but the person he believed in is now in federal prison, so I don't think he got really good advice. I'm not a protester, but I listened to my friend who told me that according to the Constitution, I don't have to file income taxes, and so I stopped filing taxes over 5 years ago. And I'm sorry to say to this viewer that, yeah, you are a tax protester if you stop paying taxes. Anyway, everything went well until now. I've tried to keep most of my dealings cash. I stay under the radar, but I feel like I've stepped on a bear trap, and probably rightfully so. Over 30 years in talk radio, I've interviewed a lot of the tax protester leaders. At least 2 of them are now in federal prison. If you've got this problem, man, you better deal with it, because you don't want to join them in prison.
Yes, the tax protester movement's been around for decades, and it's largely discredited. However, in times of economic distress, there's always a group of people out there that are looking for an easier way out that may not be legal. They're just convinced that it is, or they change their belief set to think that it is legal. And it's actually a rather irrational approach to dealing with the IRS and taxes. If the tax protester movement was correct, which basically says that taxes are unconstitutional, well, then no one would pay any taxes, and our entire society's infrastructure would break down. So the tax protester movement is one that taxpayers should really avoid at all costs. Tax protester promoters are frequently prosecuted and put in jail, and I've known a variety of them that have been imprisoned, and some of them more than one occasion. In essence, it becomes almost a religion to some of these people. However, the victims of the tax protester movement are really the taxpayers who buy into this into this propaganda. And what happens is that these tax protesters oftentimes charge taxpayers about the same amount they would be paid in tax to extricate them from the taxing system. So these taxpayers aren't really saving anything. They're just feeling like they're getting away with something. And what taxpayers need to realize is that the government has the guns in the jails, and they also have the law behind them. So unless there's going to be an entire tax revolution in this country, which I think is very, very, very unlikely, the tax protester movement's really got to be avoided at all costs.
Now, Sam, say I've bought into it and I paid a guy thousands of dollars and I'm not paying taxes and I'm doing whatever I'm doing. If I suddenly realize that my great leader is in prison doing federal time, what do I have to do so I don't join him?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And what normally happens is that when the promoter gets put in prison, my office gets a flood of calls from tax protesters asking the exact same question. And what we recommend is that these taxpayers go back and file the missing returns as quickly as possible. The IRS wants to get these tax protesters back in the system and recant their tax protester views. That's really what they're looking for, and they'd like to get paid if possible. So oftentimes these tax protesters don't have resources to pay the taxes that they haven't paid for the previous 3, 5, or 7 years.
So, okay, so Sam, I've been a tax protester. I haven't paid, say, 5 years. Pick a number. I decide maybe this is not the way I want to go. My guru is in prison. Not a good idea for me to join him. If I go to the IRS, do I just tell them I was a tax protester? I've decided I changed my mind. Am I going to be okay? Are they going to charge me criminally, or what happens?
Well, you don't go to the IRS. The way you communicate to the IRS in these types of situations is simply by preparing returns and filing them. Correct legal returns, not fake returns that opt you out of the federal system, which some people try to file. You got to file a legitimate, real tax return under the penalty of perjury. The IRS will process that return and assess a tax against the taxpayer. I had a tax protester one time come in, and it was a construction company owned by a couple, and they ended up owing well over $1 million in tax, and the IRS didn't pursue them criminally. And not only that, but the IRS offered the taxpayers a very affordable installment arrangement. But since the construction industry has taken a big hit in this recession, they were worried about being able to keep up with the installment arrangement. And they said, wait a minute, we don't want to go on an installment arrangement which we may not be able to pay on for quite some time. You know, a year, 2 years down the road, we may not be able to afford it. And our response was, well, look, you owe $1 million in tax. You've been out of the system. Start paying something. And they go, well, we don't want to be defaulters. Don't you think the worst thing that can happen is being a defaulter? I'm like, look, much worse than being a defaulter is being a tax protester. Get back in the system and start making voluntary payments. They kind of needed that talk saying, you're being irrational. So they actually went on the installment arrangement. They're still in the installment arrangement today. There was never a criminal investigation. Their guru, as you put it, which is actually a pretty good way to put it, is still in prison. And these people were never investigated by the Criminal Investigation Division at the IRS.
Okay, now does Sam say like these folks owe $1 million or whatever, and we set up a payment plan? Do I have to live with that forever if my income drops? Can I go back and say, let's renegotiate it, Ted, or how's that work?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, the $1 million that's owed is probably going to expire in about 10 years. Federal tax liens expire in about 10 years. Secondly, if their income does drop substantially or in any reasonable way, it's possible to go back and renegotiate with the IRS for a lower amount. All these rules are written in the Internal Revenue Manual, and they describe what the installment arrangements should be. We regularly have clients over the course of the life of a tax lien, which may be 10 years. You know, they'll be on 3, 4, 5, 6 installment arrangements before the tax either expires or they paid it off or settled it.
You know, so folks who have a problem with the IRS, what we keep coming up with over and over and over is there is always a solution. You may owe 10 times more than you thought you owed, and oops, all of a sudden you have to pay it. There is always a solution, so get it dealt with.